Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT Writers podcast, where I'm joined by my three fantastic writers on the TGT website. First of all, Owen, how you doing, mate? Are you well? Are you good?
I'm good. This is great. Do you want to know what this reminds me of? Remember Take That broke up in the 90s and then they got back together.
When did we break up? We just haven't been around for a while.
We had a hiatus, and I forgot how to speak within that time. But no, it's good to be back with the boys, even though I can't see their beautiful faces. But I'm sure there's probably a good reason for that.
Well, we got the best looking ones on camera, so it's all good.
That's it, buddy. That's
No, it's an absolute pleasure to be back again. It has been a while. As you may have seen also, there's been a bit of hiatus on the website. We are going to address that very soon, don't worry. Secondly, Drew, good to have you back, mate. Always a pleasure to reacquaint myself with you.
Reacquaint? What do you think this is?
That sounds sexual, doesn't it? I didn't mean it to.
Hard to say, but you act like we don't speak on a daily basis.
I know, but it's just, I don't know. It's just, Owen's got me thinking we haven't spoken for the last year. So I found that my name is Tom and I run the Gooner Talk. What is your name?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. It's good to be back.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. And I mean, thank God we can't see him because his beard is out of control. It's Johnny Boy. How you doing, mate?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm getting my thing fixed over here. It's been an ongoing issue for me, so I cannot grace you with the presence of my face today. But you know, I'm glad to be on with Drew and Owen and you. So yeah, let's do this.
John's been in continual crisis watching all the tactical breakdowns. That's what he's been doing.
You know what it is? It's like been a revelation for me, and it's caused me to reevaluate a lot of things in my life after listening to him. So that's kind of where I am right now, and it's all your fault, but in a good way. It's been a positive change for me. Go watch the tactical breakdowns.
I love that you're a member now because you can get access, and I can see you're already doing it using the emojis in the chat. You can use an emoji of yourself. That's the level where you're at now. Is you can use an emoji in the chat of yourself.
Holy crap! I just use them. I didn't know I could do that, and I just did it.
There you go. He's using himself he's playing with himself in the chat.
I'm having EGT Gang John. I'm having an existential moment right now.
That sounds really bad when you think about it. That sounds like the TGT WhatsApp group's doing something very wrong. Anyway, moving swiftly forwards. In terms of the main bit of, I can't get over that image now. The going forwards, obviously, talking about the situation that Arsenal have found themselves in, is that, believe it or not, I have pinched myself several times just to check that I am not still dreaming. But Thomas Partey has become an Arsenal player. Now, myself and Owen were on a show immediately. Well, actually, I'll say immediately after. He hadn't even signed by this point. We were the amount of hubris between us that we decided to jump on and do a show to celebrate his signing before he'd even been confirmed. So obviously I'm going to lean more on John and Drew for their thoughts because I know Owen has had his say. I will come back around to Owen and get any additional thoughts. But John, going in reverse order, how happy are you?
I mean, it's fantastic signing. It really is. I've already had my kind of interest and love of Arsenal resparked once Arteta took over and everything. But this signing, it reminds me, it was shades of Mesut Ozil signing on deadline day and all that stuff, this huge name player and all this positivity. But there seems to be a difference now. And I don't know whether that feeling of a difference is actually based in any kind of reality. I think time's going to tell there. But I mean, we're getting a world-class, all-round, ready-made midfielder. This isn't a project. This isn't, someone that's going to come in here and going to take some time. This is a guy that looks like he's ready to hit the ground running and should be able to change the way we play completely, given a 180 to how we approach the games tactically and what Arteta's allowed to do. So I'm super excited about this, and it's really going to open up a lot of possibilities tactically for the team. So that's going to be exciting to see what Arteta does with this, because as it's been reported, this was his number one target. And I'm sure we'll get into it later on. But it's not just the signing itself, but how the signing came to be, which is also something to be excited about.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to go into that as well. Drew, we were doing a tactical breakdown podcast a while back with Kieran Quayle from Get Spanish Football News. And when we were talking to him, it almost seemed... it seemed like one of him or Aouar was going to happen, but it still just seemed a little bit unreal that Arsenal were going to go in for someone like Partey. Now it has happened. Tactically, kind of, how do you see this transforming Arteta's midfield?
I think the biggest thing is that it gives us options. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about if Arteta wants to persist with the back three, or if he wants to actually switch to, a normal back four and then go with, a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 or something along that ilk. But it kind of allows us to be able to do both those transitions, but also stay in the back three if we actually wanted to. Either way, Partey for me is the kind of player who you partner with Xhaka in the midfield pivot, and then you allow someone like a Denis Ceballos or Willian to play in that 8-10 hybrid role, and then go on and affect the game further forward. And you know that you have two players who are capable of providing a pretty good shield for that back four, particularly that, because I do think that we stay with the back three because having that third center back offset the fact that we didn't really have a midfielder who could really sweep things up. I mean, I think Ceballos deputized in that role relatively well after the restart last term, but it's not where he excels. For me, I think you want to see him go further forward. He does have it in him, and we've seen it from him before for Spain under 21s. We saw from him at Betis. There's a reason why he earned a move to Real Madrid through playing as a more forward-thinking midfielder. And for me also as well, Xhaka is not this kind of player that just sits deep that people think, I've been saying this since he's come from Gladbach, and you see it when he plays for Switzerland, he'll bomb on into the final third regularly and actually have really positive contributions there, whether if he gets a crack at goal, he can actually produce some really good creative chances. He has a lot of value for the forward on the pitch. I think I wouldn't call him wasted when you set him deep, but there's so much to his game that we haven't really seen on a consistent basis at Arsenal. This allows it to happen as well. And I think the difference for me is why I wanted Partey over Aouar. It's not that Aouar's not a good player. He's a very talented young player, and it's clear to see that he's going places. Obviously Zinedine Zidane rates him for a reason. There are comparisons in certain camps in France that compare the two players, but Partey improves us in 5 or 6 different ways on the pitch, and it gives us that flexibility that Aouar wouldn't give us. He might make us more creative on a certain day, but he doesn't transform all our phases of play, both with possession and out of it. Partey does. And for me, you need that ready-made player who you can look at and say, we are now 1 or 2 levels better than we were. Aouar would have been that signing was, what's a good signing now? But in 3 years, it's a brilliant signing, but Arteta's comments have already said, I want to go for Champions League this year. That he wants to go out and maybe make an impression in the Europa League. He wants to challenge immediately. And even if you don't win, I don't think we're going to win the league, obviously, but he wants to get us back in the top 4. I think the difference between top 4 and not top 4 is Partey over Aouar. And that's no disrespect, obviously, but
yeah,
I think he's that transformative, like you always say, and for me, that's the difference. So
I think, transformative is always going to be the word. As I said, when we played Liverpool, and effectively we just got pinned in our own half, and eventually we just were subdued into the fact that we were going to lose that game. And whilst we remained in the game, and there was definitely progress made, and that was basically all down to the way that Arteta has now trained this team to play in a certain style and way. I said that Aouar, had we brought him in, would have done nothing in that game to change the result, in my opinion. He may have made us play slightly better, especially in the final third, but would he have changed the result? I really struggle to think that he would. However, if Partey was in that game for Arsenal, I feel that we had a much better chance of getting out a lot more consistently and creating things in the final third of the attacking side of our game. So it is the transformative side of things that Partey does enable us to do, and I'm absolutely buzzing to see how and where he gets placed and what formation we decide to go with as well. Owen, obviously we got your initial reaction to Partey signing on Monday evening. It's been 2 days since then. In terms of like your emotional state, how has it diminished at all? Are we still on a high? Are we still just looking back over videos of Partey, or maybe some tactical breakdown of a certain player? So how have you felt over these last 48 hours since the announcement?
I think on the night of it, on what was it, Monday night, we did that podcast. I made some big statements, and I think over time it's just clarified what I said. I still think that there's no player that you could have put in front of me that for Arsenal to sign that would go in above Thomas Partey. When we used the word transfer, will you make it your wish soon? Let's talk about that a bit.
Oh God, don't do it. Don't tempt me.
No, but I think when we use the word transformative, initially on the day all you can think of is sort of the destructive presence of Partey in the midfield. But now, after a couple of days and it's settled, I actually think what's so exciting is the transformation he could make to other players around him. Drew mentioned Granit Xhaka there. I really think that Granit Xhaka has basically been a round peg in a square hole since day one at Arsenal. He came in and people were expecting this out-and-out defensive midfielder, and that's not what he is at all. I think Dani Ceballos has come in, and yes, he does play well in that sort of 6-8 role, but I truly believe that he has the potential to be massively creative for us. I think against Sheffield United, we also seen Aubameyang going up front, Pepe on one wing and Willian on the other wing, which is something that I've been screaming out for ages. And even with the sort of lack of creative midfielder, supposedly, it just looked like there was a switch flip, a switch flicked. We just looked so much more lethal, I thought. And with that there, with the Aubameyang centrally thing, a lot of people think the only attributes to Aubameyang's game is his speed and his finishing, but I put in our WhatsApp group, there's so much more to his game. It's the movement. His movement is frightening. It just pulls people all over the place, and I really think that yes, Aouar would have been good, but he wouldn't have transformed the side in the way that a Partey is going to, in my opinion. I think that other players are only going to thrive from his presence within our side, and it's I just think it's an absolutely monumental signing. More so probably than, I know people are excited, but I don't think people know the impact that this guy is going to have on our side this season. Hopefully.
Yeah, of course, hopefully. I was just dealing with a spammer in the chat. I don't know why people do this. If you've never
they have
tuned in
nothing
for
better to do with their life.
I know, it's so weird, isn't it? For those that are watching on playback,
I heard it's Mike and Andy have created bot accounts for you.
It probably is Mike and Andy. They've created a lot. We've had some really weird comments left on videos as well that I have to go through and delete continuously, and it's so annoying. And one of them was put, "I'm single," and that's what it was. But someone amazingly just replied saying, "Tom's married," and I'm not. but the people have got my back in my relationship now on the channel. That's the level that we're at.
I like the ones that are like beautiful at 241.
Yeah. It's so weird. I don't know where that's
I messaged them. It's only costing me like 50 quid a month, but she said but after Christmas she'll come over and see me, so it'll pan out.
It's like a monthly subscription. Unbelievable stuff. So that kind of covers the parts. I only wanted to briefly cover Partey as a player very briefly because we've got a lot of content on the channel, it's fair to say, about Partey. You've got about 3 tactical breakdowns. You've got interviews with Graham Hunter, and we did one this morning with Alvaro Romeo as well. Make sure you do go check that out. His knowledge of Spanish football is just different level, so definitely check that one out. But the news that kind of broke today that shocked a lot of people, I say it shocked a lot of people. I had a sneaky suspicion that this was the case of how we managed to pull this off, and I remember chatting to a few people about it. I think I even may have brought it up on the pod on Monday, Eoin. I think I might have. That was my prediction, that I said that certain Mr. Kroenke would have had to step up the funds to bring this player in. So, John, to get your sort of initial reaction to this, you said that you had some things that you wanted to say on him. The news was broken by The Athletic.
Right.
Our good friend of the show, Amy Lawrence, who, of course, came on to promote her amazing book, which I actually have to hand, so I might as well plug it. It's not for my benefit, but go read 89. It's a fantastic book.
Great book.
Done an interview with her on the channel as well, so make sure you give that a read and go and check it out. But in terms of her article, she revealed that I say once again because I'm pretty sure that the Kroenkes were involved previously with the Pepe deal as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems more so with this one, seeing as the money had to be paid in one lump sum all at once, and Arsenal's financial capabilities just on their own weren't able to get this over the line. And she wrote the article about how they're basically effectively rewarding Arteta and backing Arteta because he's given them so much reason to trust him. How good is this as sort of a change in tact, I suppose, by the ownership? And what are your general thoughts about it?
So first of all, it's good, right? I mean, whenever the ownership is authorizing that much money right up front for a manager's number one target, that's something to be extremely happy about and hopeful about from a fan's perspective. Now, the timing of it is extremely interesting, and the timing of the Pepe deal was extremely interesting as well. And Tifo did a great kind of piece on this. So one of the biggest things that has happened from a financial perspective of this club recently is KSE's acquisition of the debt, of Arsenal's debt. Now, before, remember all that talk about a war chest, right? That war chest had to exist as liquid cash reserves in order to kind of buttress this massive debt that the club had on the basis of their acquisition of Emirates Stadium. So they needed all of this money to kind of fall back on, and you couldn't really touch it because, yes, it exists and they have all this liquid cash, but it needs to serve as collateral for the loan that they took. Now, what happens all of a sudden, the debt gets acquired by KSE. So now Kroenke owns the debt. He's allowed to release those funds now. So now all of a sudden that money that was just sitting there to serve as a basis of collateral for the loans can now be used to actually purchase players. So it's not like, in a sense, it's not like Kroenke had dipped into his own bank account and paid, given the money, but rather has authorized the use of money that was previously unable to be authorized. And my feeling on it is really one of, why hadn't that happened earlier? And my guess is because of Usmanov, because KSE wasn't 100% owner at the time. And you know that the relationship between Usmanov and Kroenke was never one that was 100%, on board and everyone was happy with. It was a rocky relationship. So if you're looking at it from Kroenke's perspective, if you don't own the club 100%, any capital that you invest from your own money is going in part directly into Usmanov's pockets, which I don't think is something that he would have been okay with. Which is why I'm wondering if we're going to see a lot more of these kind of backings going forward now that he's 100% owner and owns the debt of the club. So it's good for us that not only we saw this deal being made, but that the debt was consolidated by Kroenke. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for us, because now, he's not an idiot. He's a good businessman. He realizes that success on the pitch is going to mean more money in his pockets. Champions League, everything like that. I think when we had Wenger, independent of the debt, Wenger was consistently getting Champions League football, and I think that he was kind of behind this notion that don't worry about it. Like, I'm gonna, whatever squad I have, we can work within ourselves, and I've done it for 20 years straight. We're gonna get there, and that was the deal, right? He said, I don't need to spend my own money. I have a manager who's incredible at getting these results and getting into the Champions League to fund the bottom line. Now it's a case of, well, we need to get into that Champions League. It's a non-option anymore. And then not only that, we need to push even further so we don't fall behind. So it's exciting stuff, and it's promising that this deal was made and how it was made.
Yeah, it's interesting, obviously, because we look at Arsenal and you think of all the movements that have gone on, but like when the fans are allowed in grounds to protest, the demand for the owners to spend money, the consistent blame on them, and the wanting of change, the looking upon the ownership as effectively villains, really, and for good reason at times, for sure. But Drew, in the week, me and you had a bit of a difference of opinion about sort of how money could be invested, whether it was the ability of the club to invest. What's your kind of take on the news that's dropped today, and how do you feel about the Kroenkes investing in this Partey deal?
Just going to go ahead and drop an "I told you so" and move on. So that's kind of what it's going to be. And not from that conversation you and I had. It's more of conversations I've had with people about KSE and Kroenke over the last 12 to 24 months. It's more of, because John and I have the wonderful privilege of being Americans. Let me tell you what that comes with. It's amazing things. So we see how Kroenke runs his other sports franchises, and I put a big tweet out about it. I forget how long ago it was, 2-3 months ago. About if you look at certain franchises in particular, like the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, etc., and how you look at the key modifiers that you saw those franchises go through are the same ones we went through. They brought in a younger coach who was highly thought of, even if they weren't highly experienced. They changed the backroom staff. They started building out their rosters filled with younger talent looking towards long-term development and growth. And they built that off of that. We've done all those same three things. So we have Arteta. He did not have any managerial experience, but he's young. He's progressive. We've changed our entire setup of the club on almost every single level. And we, at the conclusion of the restart last season, we had the youngest squad in the Premier League. So none of these were accidents. It all follows kind of a model. And the whole point about KSE wanting to see if we have the right sort of groundwork laid before they start actually investing directly from their pockets, or if it's, you know, taking on additional debt for them bringing onto themselves that will allow us to spending. They weren't going to do that unless they could sit down and say, we have faith in the things that have been put in place now. We're ready to gamble that this money is not going to be in vain, because the last thing they're going to want to do is start turning us into a financial sinkhole where they start chucking money at the problem. Things don't work out one season, then you need more money the next season. Things don't work out next season, you need more money. That's not their ownership model. Fans shouldn't expect it to be. They're not prepared to do something like what Roman is doing, where Chelsea owe him £1 billion. Like that's not how they're going to operate. So I think we'll see a little bit more from them now. So if the goal of the season is to get Champions League, that's what Arteta has said. If we go out and the Partey deal comes off and helps us get Champions League, you should expect something similar from Kroenke next summer if necessary. Because if we get Champions League, that's automatically a financial boost just from that purse, more TV rights, etc. And then we also have 600,000 pounds of wages coming off the books, so that automatically is going to kind of buffer our ability to spend as well. So we might not have to dip in, but this initial push to help us get a player that can help us reach the goals that ownership and the manager and the setup wants to get us to, if they can analyze and say it's time to do this now because we think we can trust Arteta and Edu to make the right decisions to get us to where we belong, then I'm willing to make that chance or take that chance rather, and they've done that. So while this isn't like a KSE party and saying that they're the best owners on the planet, they're not, but they've made a decision that is in league with decisions they've made in the past that have reaped benefits elsewhere. So I'm not surprised by it. I'm happy they actually did it. And we'll see how it pays off. You know, proof's going to have to be in the pudding, so we'll see.
Owen, mate, that when we sort of reacting to Drew's comments there about the ownership, and I'm way out of the know in regards to how things go on over in America. I'm not sure about how in the know you are about it. Feel free to let us know. But in terms of how he's kind of managing Arsenal, I always look at the way he does it through delegation. I mean, I saw a comment from Masterson in the chat saying that the Kroenke's brought in Unai Emery. Now, I'm pretty sure that was all delegated.
I don't care. Like, and none of us should, because every ownership makes bad decisions.
They should delegate.
That's part of it. And the whole point is if they don't have, fuck's sake, man, I was trying not to get angry today. If they don't have the knowledge base of the sport that they're involved in, then they try their best to put people in positions of power that do, and then they delegate tasks to them, which is what you see in the business world on a normal level. You know, CEOs will delegate to COOs, and COOs will delegate to other people, and it's tiered, and that's how it works. So the fact that they're allowing people in positions of power to make choices, that's normal. And if those people screw up, then they're held accountable, and then you restart. You're not going to get every business decision correct. Most of them don't. Even Bayern, who's the most well-run club in the world, get decisions wrong on a regular basis. It's normal. It's part of it. So we've got to stop banging the drum about, well, they made this mistake here and that mistake there. Like, get the fuck over it. Mistakes are going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, stop always looking for a stick to beat something with and look at the things that are going positive now and focus on that instead. So,
and just to piggyback on that really quick, I think that when you're looking at KSE, you really need to contextualize the status of their of the nature of their ownership and how it's changed. And I kind of alluded it to earlier, but when you're deciding, okay, are they making mistakes? Why aren't they investing? All of this kind of things. It's all contextual as to where they were and the money that was coming in. Sorry, I don't mean to stomp on Ian's time.
Ian. I'm way too stupid to talk about this anyway. I just like listening to you. If you want,
that's not true.
If you want to ask me if you should play somebody centre back or not, then yeah, that's fine. Ask me that. But fucking finances, boys. He's always dropped this on me. No, look, I mentioned the other night. Here's my take on it. So it's been 18 months or so since KSE got 100% ownership. Yeah, in and around that time. As I mentioned, a takeover isn't free. You know, to obtain 100% of that of the club wasn't free. To appoint the people they wanted to appoint wasn't free. To get a manager in wasn't free. You know, so we talk about investment. I really again, not a KSE apologist. I think sometimes their PR maybe isn't as good as it should be for a company the size that they are. They probably sort of shoot themselves in the foot with that. But when you're talking about investment, I really don't have a problem with the money that has been invested. I've mentioned they took in Pepe, 72 million, regardless of whether it's structured payments. It's still 72 million. They brought in Kieran Tierney, 25 million pound. Gabriel re-signing Aubameyang's contract. That's not that's not free. That's an outlay of money. And then now 45 million pound on the table, all in one payment. And Drew, I remember a while back, I can't remember the exact context of the conversation we were discussing, and I was sort of saying that I think that they would get the Partey deal done, and I think it was yourselves that sort of broke down the financials and how it would probably be undoable. So as we've mentioned, this is most likely come from direct investment. We're talking about that 30 million of a cash reserve or whatever. What did we say the outlay of Arsenal's how much the operational cost per month was, like 28 million pound or something like that there. So the 30 million's gone in a month, boys. 25% of the company's income comes from gate receipts. And how long has it been now? There's a massive spike within recently, and sort of we don't know when fans are coming back. So 45 million pound is a massive statement to make, and I see people still saying, oh well, it's not enough. Well, I'm sorry, if you don't think that's enough in the current climate, you're absolutely insane. It's absolutely nuts. And now I understand as well, like there's been a lot of people even after the signing of Partey criticising Edu for the lack of outgoings, but I think everybody needs to take a step back and consider the financial climate that we're in today. And if you look, I was actually looking earlier today on Sky Sports, and they had the breakdown of how much money has been spent by the Premier League this season and how much has come in terms of sales, and it is staggeringly low for sales. So it's not just us struggling to move on players, So in terms of, I was hearing something today as well that it could be next summer by the time we really feel the impact of this here, So I think we sort of have to brace ourselves for, maybe penny pinching for the next while again. But in terms of KSE as a whole, look, I think that people are sort of rightfully annoyed with how the club has been run over the past decade. But like when we talk about they appointed Emery and they appointed Raul Sanelli, they also pulled the trigger on them people quite quickly, so give them credit for that too. They didn't let them linger. They didn't let them hang about and make things worse. They pulled the trigger. So look, I'm still sort of 50-50 over them as people and owners of the club. But I think when you criticise them, you have to sort of applaud them too when they do something well, and you can do nothing but that, with a signing like Thomas Partey coming in and Gabriel. That's another quite substantial outlay, as I said, in the current climate. So
Drew, did you want to come in on that?
I mean, no.
I like how Eoin is like, oh, I don't know, I can't talk about this financial stuff.
I think this goes in.
It's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's that I'm tired of being on repeat. And let's be clear, what's happened this summer was a calculated risk done by the management, because there's no guarantee we get Champions League. So if we don't get Champions League, and fans don't come back into the stadiums, we're going to be operating at another loss. And then now they just took on additional money that's going to add further losses on the books for them, which is what they want to avoid. They're putting faith in Arteta and the players and Edu to get things right. So the risk comes off with reward, but there's no guarantee that it will. So the fact that they have faith enough to put that risk should be satisfying to the fans. And the criticisms about not selling, there are very few clubs in the Premier League that actually sold well this summer. You can count them on half of one hand. I think 3 clubs sold well this summer at most. And also, we can't rock up to France and put a gun to every temple of whatever director of football at whatever club and say, take our players, or else I'm going to shoot you in the face. That's not how it works. If they don't want our players, they don't want our players. It's that simple. And if those players don't want to move to those clubs who do want them, we also cannot force them to leave. So there was a lot of links with Kolasinac with going back to Germany as an example. Leverkusen was probably the biggest one he was linked to. They don't want to pay him £120,000 a week. I don't blame them. He's also going to be the third choice left back at that club. I don't blame him for wanting to do that. So if those two things can't come to a head, how are you going to possibly sell him? If he doesn't want to take a wage cut to go be a third choice left back, if they don't want to pay him the money, there's nothing you can do about that. So the fans need to actually, for once in their lives, actually analyze the situation for what it is, not for what they want it to be. Those are two different things.
Yeah, I think that people look at the ownership of other clubs and make comparisons between them and us when it's just not. It's the situation's so different.
But not every club is run the same.
Exactly. People look at Liverpool, and Liverpool is a self-sustaining model. The thing is with Liverpool is that they've had the same management in control for a lot longer than what Stan Kroenke has been in full control of Arsenal. When Stan Kroenke was majority shareholder, he didn't have the decision-making power that he does now. Mm-hmm. And if you look at sort of the decisions that have been made since then, he delegated to Ivan Gazidis, who was the CEO at the time, who I think they all expected to kind of be carrying on that role. I don't think they expected him to drop out as quickly as he did. I don't think they expected Sven Mislintat to not get on with Raul Sanllehi at the time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought them both in. But at the end of the day, and the point that Eoin, that you brought up, is that they got rid of the people that weren't doing a good enough job. And that kind of went under the radar. And you know what really frustrated me on the penultimate day of the window was that when it looked like we weren't getting Houssem Aouar, the amount of people that were tweeting saying, oh, I wish we had Raul Sanllehi back. Oh, he would have got this deal done. No, blah, blah. Like, how ridiculous!
Ridiculous, and not only it's the goalpost moving that I've seen. It's like now they can't complain about Partey, so now it's Edu waited to the last minute to get. He waited too long.
Here's something as well. Here's something ridiculous as well, like about that comparison between Edu and Raul. Right, so apparently, all right, this is just apparently. I don't know for sure. Apparently, the issue with the Houssem Aouar deal is the agent fees. Who his agent is apparently his brother or that's his representative, and it was 14%. 14% of the deal was an agent fee. Now you're telling me that you would be happy to get that deal done by blasting that money into his brother's hands. When we just criticised Raul a couple of months ago for that apparently being done with the Pepe deal, it's just insanity. Do you know what I mean? But like, I don't understand it at all. The sort of the self-contradiction in this club is just absolutely insane at times.
Right. And there's a difference between investment and paying over value. Like it was clear that we were willing to invest. I think that you are hard pressed to say that KSE was not willing to invest this summer and give Arteta what he needed. But there's a difference between investment and then paying, like I said, overvalue for a player. And when you look at the fees that he was asking for, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's not something that maybe they thought was 100% necessary right now. They could have worked with it. The window's coming right around the corner in January. We're already seeing links of looking at other potential players that might fit in a specific that kind of a mold. So I'm right there with you. And I think that when you're looking at these kind of arguments, it's almost like, like I said, goalpost moving. It's one thing after the next. It's not. There's no cohesive kind of milieu that they're using as a basis to complain about anymore. It's just like it's like a deer in the headlights. Like next car, I'm going to argue with this. Next car, I'm going to argue with this. It's very interesting.
Let me come in quickly because I want to highlight something, because if you look at the tweets that I put out on, I think it must have been Sunday, I don't want to come across too much like a hypocrite because I was criticising the owners, how I felt quite rightly when the Houssem Aouar thing happened, the mood in the fan base was exceptionally low. I wasn't as low as saying we need Raul Sanllehi back, but I was pretty low about the whole situation. And I said that I felt the reason why one of the sort of the faults is that I put a lot of the fault of why we hadn't signed a marquee or one of our key targets was on the ownership for not investing. Now, at that point, the ownership had not invested, had not put the money into the club to get one of those key targets. And that's why I felt it was quite right to go, I think there is a level of blame to be put at the owners for not giving Arsenal that financial buffer when you're in a summer of relaxed, as it's been quoted by The Guardian, financial fair play. Now, I've said every other window that I can't complain too much about Kroenke not investing because we've been under such strict financial fair play restrictions, and Arsenal have been making loss after loss after loss that we've not been able to get an injection. But this summer, when we could get a really key target, improve the team massively and improve the players that are currently here. But as Jamie Carragher said, and I don't usually agree with what a lot of Jamie says, but
because you can't understand what he's saying.
That's mean. He shouldn't say that. But what he was saying is that he felt that Arteta had basically got the maximum out of the current crop of players that he already had. And I thought that was pretty much spot on. And the only way that we were going to get any further was by making some really key additions. We did that with Gabriel, with Willian, and I thought they were great. But we still needed that transformative figure. And I felt that if we didn't get either Aouar, which would have, I felt, transformed us in the final third, but Partey transforms us, as Drew said, in 5 different areas of the pitch quite easily. And had we have not pushed the boat out, and had Kroenke not invested that little bit extra just to get Arsenal over the line with this deal, I think there would have been real, evidence to criticise them for it.
So now here's the question: How do we not know the plan all along was that if we couldn't get the sales to fund it, that KSC wasn't going to actually back us to begin with. This is why maybe we waited that long, and that's obviously pure speculation. But it was clear.
Are you talking about why it waited so long to get the Partey deal over the line?
It's not just that, but it's more of just like it's clear that we were trying to shift players. I think we can all agree, and it's also clear that we were trying to shift those players so we could use that funding to directly reinvest it into the squad to improve it. And I think we were generally both after both Aouar and Partey. I think we wanted both of them. I think it became clear we couldn't get both of them. So then we tried to then make calculated choices about which one we wanted. Mm-hmm. So if we had to wait that long to see if we could even just afford it in-house without having ownership come through, then we would have done that. But I think maybe perhaps in the 11th hour, they would have said, you know what? Business hasn't gone as we wanted to. We're going to actually help so you can get one of the deals over the line, and so we did. But I kind of feel like it's like that's smart business as well, and it goes hand in hand with how we run as a club. If you can get it done through your own investment, you should you not? So go ahead.
Go on, John.
Yeah, one point on that. I think what happened is that we were always planning on getting Partey. I think that was always the plan to get Partey, and we were really going for both of them. Now, like Tom said, all of a sudden, or Eoin said, all these shenanigans with this agent fee, this ridiculous thing that his brother was asking for. Now, all of a sudden, put that player outside of our valuation, and we're just simply like I think Jared said on the chat that we are just not gonna. It was good business that we didn't do that. That is a sign that we're making a good business decision. And I think it was at kind of an 11th hour situation. And the reality is that we couldn't let anyone know that we were going to go for Partey anyway and pay the fee, because now all of a sudden you have this idiot over there at Lyon, this owner who's the president of Lyon, who is notoriously annoying at these negotiations, who's all of a sudden going to say, wait, you know what, they're going to make all this money, and I'm going to make them buy our player for more money, because I know they got it. And I know that now I know that KSC is going to back them, or whatever, information he might have had. If we had done that, they would have known, like, look, they're really, he would have driven the price up basically. The entire time, the entire summer, we were kind of talking about how difficult it is. And that was the narrative being pushed around for, I think, good reason. I think that was strategic to kind of lower prices around the league and say, like, look, we were really playing that poor us kind of card, which is not, it's not accurate, but at the same time, it's a good tactical position to take when you're trying to lower prices that people are trying to push on you. And I think that had we gone around splurging cash on Partey, it would have been like, well, is that, how are they going to sit here one hand and start laying all these people off and then come to me and say, hey, yeah, we need to negotiate with our hands out, like what was that, Oliver Twist or whatever. So, so I think that's the kind of dynamic that was existing at the last minute there.
I think, and what's frustrating me as well is so many people have just completely disregarded the impact of the pandemic this window as well. Like, they've just treated it as if it is any other window. Like, if you look at the amount of loan deals that have taken place this window, it's ridiculous. There's so many loan deals that have happened. And when you've got players like Mustafi, like Kolasinac, like Guendouzi and Ozil that aren't really playing too much, and when the ones like Kolasinac are playing, their performances are typically flawed. They're not exactly showing like they're going to be worth so much money. If Arsenal want to raise the funds to try and get a Partey on Aouar, it's going to be really difficult to do that with the current crop of sort of deadwood players, as we call them, available to the recruitment team. And I got really, and I suppose that when I look back in hindsight, I was premature with my judgment of the board or of the owners not investing at that point, because I genuinely wasn't expecting us to go out and sign Partey on the last day. I completely agree with Drew's point about the fact that we were waiting to see if we could offload players so that we could self-sustain these sort of transfers. The point was I was questioning whether if we couldn't have got the money in, that we wouldn't have done it, but we did, and so therefore the praise massively, in my opinion, goes towards the owners, a huge percent, and fair play to them for doing that. There's a lot of people in the chat box that I've seen some really good discussions, I have to say, going in the chat box about this. I'm glad that most of the people in there are keeping a lot of an open mind towards this, and really praising you guys for some of your opinions on there as well. So fair play. I feel like we could do a separate podcast on Kroenke, but I do want to move on with the conversation to some more news that dropped today, which is frustrating. It's fair to say. Now, we're not. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to speak for everyone else, but I'm going to assume that we're not all experts in the pandemic that we're going through right now.
I read it up. I looked at the statistics on Google before I come on.
And there you go. So you now know everything. Yeah, like you meet someone in the street. Oh yes, there's this many cases. I know everything.
Let's go. I'm ready for you this time.
Well, you've been tested twice. I've been tested once now. I'm still waiting the results, by the way. I can't leave the house now until I get these results back, even though I feel a lot better than I did, it's fair to say, 2 days ago. But yeah, I'm now trapped in my house until I get those results, which are now taking ridiculously long to get these results back. But as you can see, I'm feeling a lot better than I was a few days ago, whatever it is. But in terms of how this is affecting sports, there's two things that I want to focus on. I want to talk about Tierney, and I want to talk about international football, something that came up in our WhatsApp group, and Drew, you were putting this forward as well. Let's talk about Tierney first, because it's kind of the birth of this conversation. Tierney has been told that he has to self-isolate for 14 days because he was in quote marks, close contact with a midfielder, Stuart Armstrong of Southampton, who was tested positive for COVID-19. Now, Tierney has also been tested and tested negative. So, and I'm aware that basically what Boris Johnson has done is he's allowed Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and England to effectively run themselves. And there are different rules going on in different countries. Now, I'm not sure how it affects Tierney being sort of in location in Scotland and then would have to return to England. I don't know how that affects. I don't know how anyone will know how it affects going between the two countries when you're working in two different places. But effectively, he's now got to isolate for 14 days, which would mean that he misses the Manchester City match. And we desperately we're probably going to get to see Partey in that game, which is great. I mean, God forbid he contracts anything or gets injured on international duty. But we're probably going to hopefully see Partey come straight. Yes. But Tierney, at the moment, isn't going to be available. Now, John, I'm going to come to you at this first. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts around this? Because if he maintains with the statement that he put out that he was maintaining social distancing. He said he was nowhere near any of the other players, and he followed every bit of guidance. He's also been tested negative. Multiple times. And the Premier League clubs go through weekly testing all of the time. If he comes back to London Colney, or he's at home and he gets a home test, or someone goes and tests him, or he goes and gets a test, however, and he comes back negative, surely that means that he does no longer has to self-isolate and should be able to play, do you not think?
Well, I mean, further than that, Charles Watts was reporting that he even had antibodies. He was positive for antibodies. Now, I'm not an expert here, but I think we've over since March, everyone in the world has kind of learned a lot about more than viruses than we probably have ever known. We know that I can at least say with some confidence that if someone has the antibodies, that means they probably had the virus at some point, even though they weren't showing symptoms. And so if that's true, and that's my understanding of how this works, then that means that even if he was exposed to someone, the chances of him getting sick are less, at least. Some expert in the chat can correct me on that, but the issue I have with this whole situation is just the lack of clarity regarding and uniformity about the testing procedures through the league, among the leagues, and in the international community. Forgetting for a second just the sheer ridiculousness of doing international competition now in the pandemic. When you can keep people within one country and in somewhat of a bubble and controlled environment. Then putting that aside, you really need clarity as to what the procedures are and what's going to happen when. Like, what does a negative test entail? If you test negative, does that mean you can play now? And so when now magic, and and yeah, so really clarity.
Great, great.
That was great. Yeah, clarity is important. And I think that the danger of international, I think they need to just get rid of the international competitions right now. It's not serving a purpose other than to potentially damage the season and open up entire populations of different countries to the virus, which is just stupid in my opinion. But clearly, UEFA is going to do whatever UEFA is going to do, and international football is going to do whatever FIFA is going to do whatever they're going to do. So we just have to make sure that we are at least clarified as to what the position is regarding testing, positive and negative testing. If he has the antibodies and he tests negative, I think he should be able to play. And I think that I think the club should be able to make that decision. And I get it that like apparently you can test negative on the 13th day and the 14th day, be positive because it takes time for the virus or whatever. I get that. I really do. And I think I commend them for being on top of that. But at the same time, I think there needs to be clarity. And I think that there needs to be a uniformity among how all of these different areas are different international teams, as well as club level, as well as different leagues are implementing these procedures. So that's where I'm at. I spoke. I am. I was actually the entire time I was saying that I just saw Kolasinac. At left back though. It could be worse.
I feel like it won't be that though. I don't feel like you will have to see that. I think if Tierney's not involved, what we'll do is we'll go to 3-4-3 and Mainsley will play at left wing back. Gab will go left centre back, and maybe that's how it will run. But yeah, we're not experts and we're purely speculating about this, obviously. So we're probably going to get stuff.
Don't take anything I say as medical advice or anything like that. You know what I'm saying?
Like, we're not saying this is right.
I'm just a football fan here, and I'm just going off of what I've read. I'm in no way, by no means an expert, but I think that, like I said, we've all kind of learned a little bit about how this works. And if it's true that he's got the antibodies and he tests negative, I think it's a club decision at that point. And I don't know. Like I said, no clarity as to whose decision it is. Is it a governmental decision? Is it a club decision? Is it a organizational decision from the FA, or is it from FIFA? Like, it's just very complicated.
Yeah, it is very complicated. And I suppose that's kind of where I want to go in my conversation with Drew, is talking about international football. Drew, we agreed in our WhatsApp group earlier on that I can't believe this is going on. Like, I can't believe international football is taking place. We use the example of European football and sort of the Champions League, Europa League, because you're within your club, you're within your group of teammates. But international football requires you to break your team bubble and go and spend time with your other teammates from other clubs within a very enclosed environment. I saw a video today of Eric Dyer all over Bukayo Saka. Like, there was a funny headline of Bukayo Saka and Eric Dyer, Spurs and Arsenal become best mates. And like in the video, Eric Dyer's got his hands all over Saka, whatever. And whether or not there's this elite sport bubble, which means that these players can interact with each other, but doing international football just seems insane. Talk me through your thoughts, Drew.
It's insane because these are friendlies, and I'm not a big fan of friendlies to begin with.
Nations League, of course.
Yeah, the Nations League, I can understand it because that involves a bigger thing. Like, Nations League is used to, in conjunction with the Euros and all these kind of things, and seeding and whatever have you. I can understand maybe the anxiety about the powers that be not wanting to push that back or reschedule or cancel that, right? But friendlies in particular, I feel like if you're already going ahead with Nations League, then friendlies need to be binned right now. You need to minimize the amount of opportunities these players are being put into situations where they're coming together with players from other clubs. And it's clear that people have become lax again about how to conduct themselves in groups and trainings. There's a reason why certain leagues have had far fewer positive tests than other leagues. The ones that have had very strict regulations in terms of how to go about things. If you look at some of the leagues, just professional leagues in general in the United States, those that have had very strict bubbles, even during like the playoffs or regular season, they've had very few cases of coronavirus spreading. I think the NHL I've had, I can't remember, more than 2, if that. You know, NBA has done a really good job with it because they've had very strict bubbles. So I understand this is a little bit different for something like this, but the issue is that you cannot guarantee that every player from every club has been conducting themselves in the right way. So when they come together, one of them isn't potentially infected and asymptomatic. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to do that. And the issue with tests is that they have a 30% false negative rate. So you can test 2, 3, and 4 times, still have it, and it can come back negative. So how do you guarantee that all the testing has been done accurately? How do you guarantee that they are in fact being tested? Because people can easily just lie and say, yeah, we've been testing our players, but you really haven't. So is there like a governing body that's been watching that the foolproof way? So there's so many variables that you can't control that it just makes friendlies in particular just so silly right now. You know, again, I can understand maybe the risk for Nations League in a way, but something that literally doesn't matter, like, you should probably just get rid of it, you know? So that's just my take on it.
It's not like anyone actually liked these, you know? Like
the players hate them, and the managers hate them because it really interrupts your season. You know,
the fans don't even like it. Like, when it's happening, it's just because it's football, you'll watch it. But does anyone actually like, you know? Oh, great, it's international break.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. Someone said that there's been a tweet from The Athletic. Oh, here we go. So Arsenal have closed their Hale End Academy site after a positive COVID-19 test. A senior member of academy staff travelled abroad and returned to Hale End before receiving results of a test, which if a senior member of staff has travelled abroad, if it's to a country within, we don't know what country it is, but surely you have to self-isolate anyway. So why is a senior member of academy staff travelling back from abroad and not self-isolating?
Because hasn't that aspect of it been binned now? In regards to football.
What are they included in the bubble? Is that what you're saying? So they're in the elite bubble. I don't know. It depends on the trip, doesn't it? If the trip was within the bubble of the elite sports, then yes. But I don't know. It just says, has learned that a senior member of academy staff travelled abroad and returned to Hale End before receiving results of their COVID-19 test. The test is subsequently returned as positive, forcing the club to close down activities with the staff not permitted on site until further notice. Now, I assume that further notice is until all those members of staff have been tested.
Correct. But that's on the club now. So if they know someone went abroad, they should not allow that person back to Hale End until that test has come back, negative or positive. So the clubs, this is what I mean, the clubs have to do their due diligence as well. They can't just say, oh, well, we'll trust that you did your job on an individual basis. You can't do it that way. You've got to be vigilant about everything. And I don't think any clubs really are anymore. I think people just assumed before all these spikes started happening over the last couple of weeks that people just assumed that things were fine again. But that's not how you have to treat this. You know, you have to be hyper cautious in a lot of different ways, and a lot of people don't want to be.
And what's really frustrating is that, like, when you see some of the behaviour of players as well, like, we're talking about this, say Tierney should be allowed to come back, but you have to also be critical of the players that are breaking these. Like, you look at Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood and the behaviour that they had on the past England trip. You look at Tammy Abraham, Jadon Sancho, and there's one other player that was involved. Can anyone remind me who that third player was?
Declan Rice.
Was it Declan Rice?
Yeah, he was with Mason Mount and
But Tammy, Jadon Sancho, and there was someone else that was at a party for Tammy Abraham.
Ben Chilwell.
Was it Ben Chilwell? So
while you're thinking about that, can I just point out Mike Hertz's amazing tweet that he just put out?
Where is it?
I know Mike's in the chat, so
Mike Hernandez. I'm up on it now. Let me read it. Man has unhooked as well. Is there anything Tierney can't do? Brilliant. Yeah, there is no bounds to his capacity. Is that he's immune? That's like he's immune to this thing. So there you go. I'm not sure if it was Grealish that was that. Grealish Grealish did break quarantine, I believe, really early on during the pandemic. But that's the thing, is that, like, that's what frustrates me too, is that, like, we can complain about how the FA or the FIFA or UEFA are organising these friendlies, but also down to the small and the finer details, the players that are going out and breaking these rules. Like, these guys are supposed to be role models for the younger generations. And it's a really important time. But no matter what you think of the virus, I know there's a lot of people out there that think we should just carry on with daily life. And you're completely entitled to that opinion. But the difference is that there are genuine laws in place stopping these things from happening. And that these people are going out and they're just breaking them. And these people are meant to be these role models for the kids who are going to be acting in similar ways. People buy the shirts. People pretend to be these players on their playgrounds. They want to emulate these players in daily life. So if they see that their hero, it's fine for them to go and break quarantine rules. Well, they'll think, oh, it's fine for my hero to do it, so it must be fine for me to do it. Like, it seems really silly, but kids are impressionable. Like, it's naive to think that they're not. So it's just frustrating. I don't know if anyone wants to come in on that point specifically.
Yeah, I will, because look, I'm not afraid to admit it at all, and I'll explain my logic behind it. Me and Drew already had a debate over this. I'm one of the people that think this is just absolutely ridiculous, and it isn't that I don't think that this is a very dangerous situation. I think that the way it's been handled is completely, just absolutely ridiculous. Dealing with a situation like this is something you can't do half-cocked. You know, there's no half measures. You either do it in a really regimented way or you don't. Because any in between is completely useless. It doesn't work. And my problem with this here is that, as you said, and this is in regards from your average Joe going to work every week to the Premier League. It's that all these measures have been put in place to prevent stuff like this happening. You know, maintaining this elite bubble, and then they decide to go ahead with international football, like you say, letting multiple people mix from multiple bubbles. It's just insanity. So what they've done there is just, you know, counteracted all the positive work that they have been doing in recent months. And I can't comprehend their logic behind making that decision. It's just absolutely insane. It's just absolute insanity to me. You know, it's scary to think that this is my annoyance with it. I'll explain my situation, because I think it sort of gives more detail to why I'm slightly angry with it. Is, you boys know, we had our first baby in January, and my daughter was actually born on the 10th of January, which was the exact date the first ever confirmed COVID-19 case. So basically, from the day of her birth until maybe about 6 months ago, until maybe she was about 6 months old, we were on really regimented lockdown, whereas people would normally have the support of their family to relieve a bit of pressure. We had absolutely none. So to see these stupid measures, you know, these measures being put in place and then stupid decisions like this really infuriates me, because, Drew, like you said to me, there's people living with vulnerable people in homes and they can't go out, and it's being all that sort of self-sacrifice is being completely undone by decisions like this. It's just absolutely ridiculous, I think.
Drew or John, do you want to come in?
I mean, yeah, Owen and I got in a pretty big debate about it, but for me, I think the buck stops. I do agree overall that there's no gray area with this. It's either you go full bore and it's full on lockdown to like militant levels almost, or it's you don't do anything and you hope for the best. The problem is that not doing anything and hoping for the best has proven to not work. It works initially for a little while, and then eventually it catches up with you, and then you have a situation like we're in Sweden, where they did very well, and now all the numbers are going up through the roof because of it. Or you have a situation where it's like a heavy lockdown and it works very well for a little while, but then people start to get anxious and all these things start happening residually, and the society starts getting up in arms about they just want their lives back. See the United States as a prime example of that. So it's like either way, this is going to be an uncomfortable scenario. Either way, someone's going to be, or many people are going to be annoyed or anxious or frustrated or dealing with, you know, onset depression because of things, all these different things that are correlated with coronavirus. But the thing for me will always be what's going to save lives. The thing that's going to save the most lives is what you should do. That to me is where the buck stops. And for me, I was always fine with like the heavy quarantine. Like I got on with lockdown quarantine pretty well. I also have other responsibilities that make it so I have to take this more seriously than even other people, because I have two elderly parents and one of them is critically ill and I have to help take care of them. So I can't even be around people very much right now because of that. And I'm fine with that. So that's my choice. But to me, it's also like the people I do know that had during lockdown, they still were required to go to work. Because I have a lot of friends in the medical field. Almost all of them either got coronavirus or they knew someone that got coronavirus. So obviously, even just doing your normal things put you at a level of risk that you shouldn't necessarily need. But there's so many other variables. Like, how does it affect the economy? Like, that's another thing. Like, how does it affect jobs? Like, like, I was lucky enough to still have to go to work during all of this stuff. But a lot of people lost their jobs because of it, because of decisions that were made, because lives are trying to be saved. So it depends on the level of self-sacrifice that a people and a nation want to go through. And that defines what your stance is going to be. It's tricky. And Jesus, we could be talking about this for 6 hours and none of us want to be.
Good, 100%.
So,
yeah. Like every country's acted differently towards it. You just need to follow the guidance that's laid out. Is that I think the point that we kind of boiled this down to is whatever the guidance is right now, it just needs to be followed, and it's just there's the buck stops at that. Like there is no grey area. Like as you mentioned, it is just you follow the rules or you get in trouble for it. And I think that's part of it. I don't want to get into, as you said, too much debate. I think part of it as the consequences of breaking those rules have not been strict enough to deter people. Like a £10,000 fine to any of those footballers is not going to bat an eyelid. Like it needs to be contextual and like it needs to be relative to that to try and deter people from doing whatever they would like. But I'm hoping that this Tierney situation gets sorted out. I'm hoping that he can get tested or have the test that needs to be done so we can see whether or not he can play. If it turns out that there is nothing that can be done, then quite rightly, he shouldn't play against Manchester City. Obviously, we're not doing this from a biased direction saying, oh, please let him play, because we're not. Because at the end of the day, if it comes down to it and he has to miss that game, I'll be annoyed in the sense that, we're missing one of our best players, but I would have been like, fair play to Arsenal for following the rules, because that is much, much better than doing the opposite. So, but fingers crossed, the rules can be followed and there can be agreements reached or certain things can take place to enable it to happen. But if it can't, because we have to follow these strict guidelines, then completely fair enough. That's the monetization of this video has gone down the drain with any.
Please drop your mask emoji in the chat. There's a new mask emoji.
There's a new emoji for masks in the chat now. Yeah, unbelievable stuff. So yeah, it's probably it's not the best way to end the show talking about very current affairs, but we've covered a hell of a lot of topics in today's show. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to all of you. Owen, a pleasure as always, son.
Thanks very much. It's good to get the band back together. I feel like we were seeing a lot of each other for a while and then it just stopped. I felt like it was cut off, like a teenage breakup. I was listening to old romantic 80s rock songs in my bedroom crying and stuff. It's good to get back at it.
John, absolute pleasure. I mean, I'm hoping that next time we'll be able to see you and see how controlled the beard is by that point.
You absolutely will. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Like Owen said, it's good to be on here, and I know that you've been a little under the weather, so hopefully you feel a little better soon. Because
cheers, mate.
Yeah, it sucks. I was a little under the weather before, and nowadays the second you get a sniffle, you're like, oh crap.
Yeah, it makes you so paranoid. Genuinely, it's horrible. It's not great, and obviously you also have the situation where that now you've had a test, you have to self-isolate and you have to wait for that test result to come back. And that is one of the big problems as well, is about the logistics and how smooth the process of getting people's results back is. That's just creating even further problems. So,
yeah. I don't think it's a controversial statement to say this whole thing sucks real bad. And
no, it's not. It's horrible. It's been handled horribly, and it's just it's not.
But that's why. Look, it's good. It's always good to talk to you guys. Is the point here? And Drew, it's always good to talk to Drew and Owen and Tom. Even though I know we talk in like the group chat, but it's always good to just kind of to get on here and have a good conversation because there's always good points going around.
And interact with our fantastic chat as well. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you ever so much, guys. There's over 500 of you at one point at the same time. So crazy stuff for just a news update, effectively. Drew, thank you ever so much as well for jumping on with us this evening.
I half regret it because I ended up angry and didn't want to be. So,
but no, it's always a risk.
I feel like that's Drew every time, though.
Pretty much. It's always one, but it was good.
Always, whenever I get Drew on, I always make sure that this program is not okay for kids because Drew will swear inevitably.
I can't, dude. I'm a New Yorker. I cannot control
I'm still convinced that that's why you take me on, because my stupidity angers him a lot, and it's
No,
you're
that's
like
not.
you're like a positive feedback. loop,
sometimes I say stuff I don't even believe in just to piss him off.
Owen's like a heel. Owen's the heel of the
Well,
podcast.
now that I know that's what happens, I'm never going to respond to you again. How about that?
As long as you do my editing, Drew, that's okay.
Touche.
So that is going to round off today's show. Thank you so much, people, for tuning in. We did a show earlier on today, myself and Alvaro Romeo, talking about Thomas Partey. So if you want to get access to that, you just need to go on the channel and have a look. Members, expert members, there is a brand new link for the Discord server for anyone that hasn't jumped into it already. If the link that's in the community tab, which you can find by going onto the YouTube homepage, and you go into the community tab, you will find the link there. Join us. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of chat going on all the time. I mean, you even get a little bit of transfer info sometimes. And all the guys got very excited when I was saying, I don't think Partey is going to be the only signing. I mean, it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek because it was 3 youngsters that were coming in, but at the same time, everyone got very excited in the chat, and it delivered as well. So there's some really fun stuff going on there, some really good discussions, and yeah, you should definitely check it out. If you want to join as an expert member, you just need to go into the description and click that join membership button, and then choose the expert member level. You also get access to exclusive content and videos. There will be a Plus members podcast with one of the I was about to say one of the Xbox regulars. I don't know why I would say that. One of the podcast regulars. That's what I've been doing in my lockdown. One of the podcast regulars, you'll be able to get an exclusive interview with one of them, and a expert member will also get an exclusive interview with a expert, believe it or not. Last month we had Adam White, who's the chief features writer at Get French Football News. It was a fantastic chat about Awar, which
is he still getting stick for saying Gabriel was right-footed? Because I'm going to make fun of him for that later on.
Probably. GFFN have just had the worst summer window ever. Like, they have been bombarded.
They've been assaulted.
I get people tweeting me going, why do you know people there? They hate Arsenal. They've got an agenda against us. I was like, can you blame them for not being frustrated with Arsenal fans and how they've been just utterly harassed all summer? You can't blame them at all. But Adam's a lovely guy. And he obviously is in producing the Modern Footballer magazine, which I usually have one to hand to always throw up, which I do. You should go check it out. It's a really fantastic bit of content. If I scroll through it, you can find pieces from myself and Drew. Drew, what did you write in this first one? What was it? What was your piece?
The first one?
It was about how Gabriel's left-footed.
It was so long ago, I actually don't even remember. Haaland? No, don't insult me. About Sebastian Deisler.
The yellow wall? Oh,
Sebastian Deisler.
Sebastian Deisler. And I did one on Ferran Torres in here, who ended up going to Manchester City in the end. And in the next one, Drew, what are you writing about for the next one? Give people a sneak tease.
I did a piece about Alphonso Davies, much to my chagrin. I had to eat some humble pie on that in certain ways.
You did.
Doing an in-depth piece on United's transfer window.
No, I didn't. And then it's then like the monthly column about Dortmund and how they're getting on, and my thoughts all about everything that's going on there. So.
Nice. And I'm doing a piece on the one and only Marco Asensio. So, yes. And to be fair, I haven't plugged any of our articles yet when we're doing the TGT Writers podcast. Tomorrow, going out live, because I'll still be self-isolating because I haven't got my test result back yet, will be Owen's biographical piece on Mikel Arteta. So that will be out for you guys to indulge in. John, who conducted an interview 7 years ago, will be releasing. Will get released very soon.
Yeah,
how's that going?
Poor Brian. He actually messaged me like, "Hey, so are we still doing?" I'm like, "Yes, I promise. I'm so sorry."
He's like in the interview. It's so Brian. What was your reaction to Mesut Ozil signing on deadline day?
No, but he was good. He's a great sport. He was a great guy. He said, "No problem. Just enjoy the party." All right. Gotta love it. That's never gonna stop, that joke.
And I'm sure Drew has been brainstorming some ideas. He might be writing another piece about another Bayern Munich player. You never know. You might enjoy that.
I'd rather put my head through a blender, to be honest with you.
There you go. Just one. Alphonso Davies will do that to you, apparently. Thank you ever so much, guys, for tuning in. Really appreciate all the love that you've been giving us in the chat box. Every single time I come here, you are fantastic. So we will see you again very soon. Please drop a like on the video if you enjoyed our entertainment for you for the last hour and 7 minutes. But other than that, we'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.